Now that I can create an order and I can create order items, I want to associate those order items with a new order. So I decide to delegate that responsibility to the order class itself. It should know which items belong to it, which order items that are associated with it. I still have lingering concerns about the order class, however. I'm concerned how I'm going to expose a generic list of order items, but not allow the caller to add items to the order outside of the add order item method that I'll create. And the reason is because that add order item method, I really want to use that to handle other tasks like tallying the number of order items, have a running subtotal, and so forth. Things that were expressed as a need in the user story. But I decided to put that concern on hold just for now and simply get to the point where I can add order items to an order. All right. So what I'm going to do is start by creating a new order test.cs. And I want to begin to implement the new unit test to add order items to an order. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm not feeling very original at the moment, so I'm just going to call this just test. All right. I'll come back and rename that later once I get a clearer idea of what it is that I actually need. I don't know. Maybe I should go ahead and do, I know I'll need an initialize method at some point. So I guess what I'll do start by creating an order service. And now I begin to think about all the things I got to do to create a brand new order, and create a brand new part and add the part to an order item and add the order item to a part. It just seems like there's so much work involved here. So I decided to take a few shortcuts. Not saying this is a good idea. It's just something I'll discuss it in just a moment. So let me just go ahead and do it. You know, I have a moment of tired head as I originally created this, and I can't come up with the right name for the unit test, so I just merely used the word test. I anticipate needing to do a lot of setup, and so I went ahead and created an initialize method as well. I think I'm tired and I'm just using this cookie cutter approach rather than really thinking of whether I need something or not, which as it turns out, I will not wind up needing this, so I can probably just remove it. Here again, I'm just following the original flow of my thoughts as I built this application. But next up, I want to create an order and an order item. To create an order, I'm going to need to create an order service and a contract. To create a contract, I'm going to need a contract service and a fake contract service repository. To create an order item, I'm going to need a part, which in turn needs a part service, which in turn needs a fake part service repository. Well, I wasn't in the mood to create those long chains of classes and dependencies, so I cheated a little bit here. I just created a hard-coded contract, part, and order item. Now, honestly, I feel bad about this because I foresee a potential problem with this in the future. What if I change the process of instantiation in any of these classes in the future? Well, I've completely circumvented the roles of these service classes. The order service, the part service, the contract service, and so on. And this is not good. But I'm tired of writing all that initialization code, creating fakes and so on every single time I need to just test something simple. Every time I want to run unit tests that somewhat interdepend on each other. So I consider for a moment the advice that I read in the book Growing Object-Oriented Software Guided by Tests by Freeman and Price. And basically it says if a test is hard to write, it might be an indication that there's something wrong about the system under test. And I think about that for a moment. Is it that I've created too many classes, too many dependencies? And after a few moments of thinking about it, I discount that. The test is not hard to write per se, it's just laborious. It's laborious because I've chosen to split up my unit tests into multiple files, like so, and that's just a convention that I chose to do. Had I used all of the setup work that I did, for example, in the order service or in the part service test, I could just reuse that now in my order test.cs, what turns out to be this unit test here that I'm working on. And so perhaps I could take all those expectations from all these other initialized methods throughout my various service test classes and files, and I could refactor them somehow into a set of helper methods in a helper class. Maybe I'll do that later. I'm not really sure how to go about that just yet. For now, I decide to proceed with the lazy man's approach, creating the contract, the part, and the order item instances. And maybe for a rainy day, I'll come back to this and I'll try to refactor the unit tests and make them correct. So right now, I realize that I'm doing myself the code, and I certainly wouldn't want to show this to the developers who will ultimately undertake this and use this, because it doesn't represent what I really want to happen. I don't want somebody to just create a contract like this. That's not the right way to create a contract. But I'm cutting corners now because I want to finish. And then I'll come back to this and refactor it later. Okay? So at any rate, I think the important point for this lesson is that the unit test drives a few new properties, like these here, and the add order item method here. And so what I want to do is now open up the new the order class that we had from a long time ago, and I want to start implementing some of these. So for example, I want to implement the order item count, and I'm going to also implement subtotal. And the reason for these is that ultimately I don't want the caller to use this list to get all of its information. First of all, I can just tally these up as I'm adding. So if there's a quantity of 3 in one order item and a quantity of 5 in another order item, I can go ahead and say that's 8 without having to do some link to objects and use the sum method, extension method on the order items property in order to get at the number of items in the order items in the order. And the same would be true with the subtotal as well. Why calculate it multiple times when I can calculate it once and just save off the value? At least that's the thought process. Okay, so we've got that, and now what we want to do is I have a thought here that maybe what I should do is remove this and move it down here a little bit and make it private instead and see how that impacts. Because I don't want, again, this is my ongoing angst, I don't want to expose this as a public property and let everybody have all of the access to all of the methods on a list of T. I don't want them to be able to add new items outside of my new public void add order item. Order item. Right, so that's why I make it private temporarily. I know it's going to break something. I just want to see what it will break in my unit tests. And so we'll come back to that in just a moment. I probably should take this in multiple passes. Again, I'm getting a little bit lazy here near the end of this series, just looking for shortcuts, and it's probably not the right way to go, but it's a good opportunity at least to talk about what not to do. Okay, I guess. So what I'm able to do is go ahead and reference the private order items property now and use the add method here to add this new order item. And then what I want to do is a for each through each item in the order items collection, the list of order items. And I'm going to do this order item count, and I'm going to grab off the quantity for this specific order item, and the same will be true for the subtotal. We'll just do that, item.line total. Okay, great. So now the order will be able to look at, hey, what's your subtotal so far? Very cool. And I think that's all I'll need to do for the moment. And so let's go ahead and just run all the unit tests now. And you can see that we get an exception. In fact, it's a build error. And the problem is that we don't have a definition for order items. What? So let's go ahead and double click on that and see where the problem lies. Well, the problem is that order items is no longer visible. We made it private just a moment ago in our order class. And so we need to address this right now. So herein lies the value of unit tests. I can see what I broke. And since I'm running the unit tests often, I can easily narrow down the source of the problem. So in this case, the source of the problem was clear. By messing around with the visibility of this this list of order item called order items, I now have to decide what needs to change in order to get this working again. And so after a few minutes of contemplation, I realized that both my implementation of order items as well as this old this unit test where we had the problem, where was that? Let's get back there. Yeah, this order service test, both of these things need to change. And so I need to keep the list of order items private for the reasons that I mentioned before. However, I can expose members of the list of order item without giving the caller complete access. And I can do that by creating a read-only property called items. And I can go a step further and allow the caller access to virtually all of the properties and the methods of a list of T by implementing this new interface that just became available with .NET 4.5. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a public read-only list of order item called items. And I'll just implement the get only, and we'll return order items. All right. And so what's interesting about this is while I'm returning order items, which is of type list of order item, by marking this as read-only list, I force the caller to be constrained to treat the list of order item only as a read-only list. So it will not expose the add or remove methods of the list of T. And so now in the order test, what I want to do is, in the order test here, where we had that error just a little bit ago, what I want to do here, instead of searching for is instance of type order items, we'll only look for instance of type items. And instead of looking for a type of list, we'll just make sure that it's a read-only list of order items. All right. And so now Before I go ahead and rerun, let's go ahead and run the unit test now. Okay, and so it passes. Now so we fixed that problem. I do have one glaring problem though. This name test, we got to fix that. Again, it was being lazy. I didn't really know what I was creating, and so now it's time to come back to that and make this right. So really, what we're testing, the method under test, is the add order item method. And so when given a valid order item, I want to make sure that it adds the order item, like so. And that's much more descriptive of what's happening in this unit test. And let's to run it one more time to see that we didn't break anything by renaming it. It absolutely works. Great. Okay, and there's really one more scenario that I need to enable in my use case, and so we're going to begin to wrap up this series in the next lesson. Thank you.